Today we're talking about subject twos. I don't do this as often as I'd like to. And is it related to wholesaling? It is, but it is what we call a creative financing strategy. So if you have never heard of subject two, or you want to get a crash course on what it is, why we do it, and how we do it, that's what today's live stream is all about. So what I'm going to do is use my beautiful little whiteboard back here because I'm an old school type of guy, and we are going to walk through on subject two. So do me a favor, use the comments, let me know which market you're in, make a friend here, and reach out to you. Guys, I know I was out last week, but I'm back, so I rarely miss a live stream. So we're talking all about subject twos today. I absolutely love subject twos, and I'm going to tell you how to do subject twos as a wholesaler. You see, a lot of people think they can do subject twos or any type of creative financing to avoid wholesaling, and that is the wrong way to think about it. Remember, anything you try to run away from is always going to sneak up on you behind, and I've learned that the hard way. It is the truth. Let's get into subject two and let you understand what it is. The correct saying is subject to. Some people like to abbreviate it. Problem is, you start speaking slang with your sellers, you're going to confuse them. And if you start speaking to a lawyer or a title company and start using shorter forms of it, you just confuse them. And so the correct word is subject to. So there's three elements that are tied to a subject to deal that you have to firmly understand, because I find a lot of people that do subject to and creative financing is they don't have a firm foundation. So just like wholesaling, you have to have a firm foundation. If you want to reach out, work with me and Zach. I've been doing this going on 22 years. I found subject twos, creative financing by accident. I started out wholesaling, and then I came across deals that I couldn't figure out how to close. And so I got people smarter than me around me to help me out, but it actually took me a couple years. And I'm here to tell you, here's the secret. Do your wholesaling business, because wholesaling is what's going to produce the cash so you can buy these wonderful subject to deals, any type of creative financing. You see, subject to is under the umbrella of creative financing, but it does not replace wholesaling. I can't stand when people say, oh, hey, do subject to so you don't have to fight with all those other wholesalers. We pay full value. That's basically a lie. And I'll prove it and show you how that works. So let me go through it and just show you the basics of how it works. So if you do a subject to deal, you're going to have a house right here. Forget my graphics here. And that's it. So I told you there's three parts to it, okay? Number one is basically what we're going to be called a deed. Now, some of you guys will call this warranty deed. It could be a specialty deed. There's a million different types of deeds. There's quick claim deeds. I'm not getting into this specific type of deed, but for the most part, it's usually a warranty deed and you have a deed. What is the purpose of the deed? You have to understand what the purpose of the deed is. All a deed does, so number one, it's recorded on public record. Why is that important? Because it proof of ownership. It proves who owns the property. That's it. That's the deed. This is the part that the owner gets in possession. Now, I'm not going to get in there. Some states it gets a little particular, but I'm just giving you a general overview. That's number one. Number two, the next one is going to be called a mortgage, or in some states, it's going to be called a deed of trust. So everybody understands the deed, and I want to let you know that the deed is basically in the seller's possession. Technically, it's on public record. The mortgage, or the deed of trust, is basically what we call the leverage. And what do I mean by leverage? It's basically the bank's ability to record it on public record. So once again, it's recorded for the entire world to know. And then the bank usually goes in the first position, means they get paid first. And then they use it as leverage. Why? Because if you don't pay it back, they can start a foreclosure lawsuit. And this is what we call, my friend, leverage. So the reason why banks are more willing to give out mortgages or deed of trust is because they can leverage it with a foreclosure lawsuit. So basically, if the homeowner decides not to pay it back, then the bank has recourse. And they can collect legal fees, any type of recording fees, and they get it all back when it goes to a final auction. And that's going to be number two. Now, there is a third instrument that you need to be aware of, which sometimes is the sticking point on these deals, and it's what we call the promissory note. And this is not, I repeat, not recorded. It is a private record, which it's notarized. By the way, all these documents are usually notarized. We'll put notary. So there's legitimacy, and they make sure the correct parties sign and they have a witnesses. So the promissory is not recorded, and it basically spells out the terms of the mortgage. So is it 30 years? Is it 15 years? Is it 10 years? It'll also give you the interest rate and stuff like this. Now, what you got to understand on the promissory note is it's personally guaranteed. What does that mean? It means no matter what, John Smith takes out a mortgage or a deed of trust, he personally guarantees it, which means no matter what happens, he's on the hook to make sure that note is followed through. The purpose of the note is to spell out the terms and details, and if it gets violated, then they can come over here and use the leverage instrument to enforce their leverage, which is going to be a foreclosure. And guys, this is it. This is the only 3 documents that we focus on when we talk about doing a subject to. Now, when I'm doing a subject to, the reality is, since the seller is in possession of this, is we want the deed. Now, I'm not here to tell you how to take title. And before I go any further in this live stream is, you've got to understand that you need to get legal advice when doing this. And this is where I disagree with a lot of people, is subject to is not a beginner strategy. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. I know it's easy to sell a course on it, and most of the verbiage on the courses I see is, why fight with wholesalers when you go to subject to and just pay full price? You're not going to make much money doing that. In fact, you're probably going to get in deep hot water doing it. And I'm telling you, make sure you get some legal counsel. Start with your title company. Tell them, hey, I'm interested in doing a subject to. The best way is find somebody in subject to that needs your help, which I'll show you how to do. Don't worry, in this live stream. And then say, hey, what's the correct documentation? They'll usually put you in touch with a qualified real estate lawyer to help with the paperwork. Guys, it's not as much as you think. And honestly, if you want the deals to stick and be successful, you should at least get legal guidance to make sure you know what you're getting into. Because remember, not only are you responsible to yourself and your family, you're also responsible for the seller. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can get in trouble in this. So what we're going to do is we want to get this deed. That's why I've highlighted red. Why? Because the seller's in possession of it. And usually they will exchange the deed for us to be able to take over this part. Now remember, I can't change any of the deed of trust or the mortgage. It's set in stone. It's recorded. You're not going to be able to change it or touch it. All you do is you pay for it. So think about this. Your neighbor's got a $50,000 car. They bought it 6 months ago. He got relocated. He says, I can't afford the car. I think I owe more than it's worth, about what it's worth. And I said, tell you what, I'd like to buy it, but what if I just take over your car payment of $600 a month? You do that? Yeah. We just enter an agreement for you to sell it to me for the $50,000, and then I'll pay down the loan, and when it's done, they'll transfer the title to me. That's all you're doing here, guys. So if I can't change a bank note on a car, you can't do it on a piece of real estate. So we're just going to take over and make the payment. And here's the important part you have to understand. The promissory note, nothing changes. It stays in place. Why do I tell you this? Because every seller, a lot of sellers, they want to get rid of the promissory note. You can't. It's not recorded, but it's been notarized. It's tied and linked to the deed of trust and the mortgage. And in the perfect world, you would take the seller's name off the promissory note and put your own on there, but the bank's never going to allow you to do it. So you're never going to mess with this at all. It is what it is, and you have to keep it. Now, in a perfect world, you take the deed and you re-record it, you put it in your LLC. Some people are going to put it in a trust. It doesn't matter how you do it. This is what we're after. And usually you will exchange a monetary fee for this. How much? I'm going to get into that. Don't worry. It's a lot cheaper than you think. Remember, the mortgage and the deed of the trust, it's recorded. It stays there. You don't touch it. You don't touch the promissory note. Basically, you're taking over the payments and you're getting the deed to sign over. That is it. End of story. Now, let's go through the math of how this would work, because a lot of people really confuse this, and it's actually pretty easy. So let's go through an example of how this works so everybody understands. Now, I want you to understand that just because you can do a subject to deal doesn't mean you make any money. In fact, most of the people I see doing subject to deals, they're hoping and praying that 5 or 10 years down the road, they're going to make some money. And if that is your strategy, you need to reconsider and watch this entire video. Because a subject to is, you have to be very, very careful. Let me give you a basic example. These are my favorite kind of ways to do it, and then I'll walk you through the logics on it. So say you have a $300,000 property. Say that's the true ARV. That's it. Now say it just needs a little bit of painting, just minor stuff, a couple grand. So if I was going to buy this, let's do it this way. Let me show you why subject to is so powerful. 300K property. If I went through a bank, they're going to require 20 to 25% of that property down right off the bat. So I want you to understand what what you're into these houses for when you do that. So let's see, 25%. That means you got to put down $75,000. Okay. Then your closing costs, which you got to pay out of pocket, $300. And in my area, it's about 1.5%, about 0.015%. That's another $5,000 closing cost. So you're already at $80,000 and you haven't even got a loan yet. It's a lot of money, guys. So you can leverage some really nice properties, but understanding, and then don't keep in mind, you're going to have to qualify. What do you mean by qualify, Rick? You're going to have to get the last 2 tax returns, and you're going to have enough income to satisfy the loan that you're looking to go. And on average, they don't want to see a lot of debt on you. And if you understand that, if you've ever gone through bank qualifying, it is a nightmare. The beauty of being a real estate investor, especially a wholesaler, is we control how much we make. Remember, nobody gives a crap. I don't give a crap how much I make. In fact, I pay myself the minimalist salary. Why? Because I don't want to pay more taxes than I need to. But I can blow up my net worth. So banks, you know what banks only ask for? They want your W-2s, and they want 2 years worth. So if you do wholesaling correctly, you should not have monster paychecks. In fact, if you do it correctly, you reinvest it back in. How do you do it? 401k, SEPs, all that stuff. I've done tons of videos on this, but I'm not here to teach you wealth today. How to build net worth is to qualify, you have to have very high W-2s. You have to have the last 2 tax returns. Oh, and then they're going to call your credit score. And listen, let's be frank. Let's be honest with you. Some of you guys just don't have it, and I'm okay with that. And if you understand that, this is painful. I've been through this pain so many times. You have to set up your W-2s, and to be honest with you, the amount of taxes you're going to pay to get your W-2s, there's a better way. And basically, if we do the subject to way on the same type of property, what if I could show you where you put down a total of $10,000? That's everything out the door, the seller and your closing costs. That means you're going to bring 10 grand to the entire table, which is a lot more palatable than that $80,000. It's a $70,000 difference. No qualifying, no delay, no waiting. And here's the cool part. You do not personally guarantee the loan. Now, don't misconstrue this. We want the deal to go forward, because even pulling 10 grand out of my pocket, I want to make sure it works. But which side of the situation do you want to be on? If I wanted to do 10 properties, I could do, if I took this and did 10 properties on this strategy, I would need $800,000 for 10. This strategy, if I did 10, I only need to produce $100,000. And guess what, guys? Who's going to pay this $10,000? I know what you guys are saying, well, crap, Rick. I got to go to my neighbor. I got to go to my dad, my mom. No, your new buyer is going to pay this. Who pays the 80 grand? You do. That's why it sucks. Anybody ever got a bank loan? Is like, it's so painful. It's ridiculous. Like right now, I can get a bank loan with this a click of a mouse, but I don't really need it. But I will tell you, when I was in this position, when I was trying to build my portfolio of real estate, I couldn't do anything to get a bank loan. It was a disaster, and I struggled with it. I bought like 3 or 4 properties with the bank, and after that, they said, no way, Rick, we're not giving you any more loans. It's too risky. And this is why you want to consider doing a subject to. They are absolutely amazing and requires very, very little capital. That's the other thing I'm telling you on it. Very little capital, considering that you can control the property. But you have to understand the strategy of how to take down a subject to. And this is the biggest debate going on the internet right now. Anybody can take down a subject to. The question is, can you make money in the beginning? Can you make money in the middle? And can you make money at the end? That's the only way I do subject twos. Guys, there's people out there teaching you to put down $20, $30, $50,000, and then they tell you to go borrow it. They got some sort of, hey, I got private lenders. Guys, you are just getting a bank loan if you're borrowing money to do this. Now, I'm not against borrowing against private money, but most of the time they're going to have hard money terms, and now you're taking over the seller's debt, and now you're adding on more debt. It's probably going to be nearly impossible to get any cash flow out of that property. So understanding, you need to find the right type of subject to deal. So what I'm going to do is flip the board over and show you exactly what type of subject to deals you want to do. Now, I'm thinking here, let me give you one big disclosure here, and I'm absolutely adamant about this. Guys, there's so much attention going towards creative financing right now. I'm not going to lie to you, I do love it because it's been like a dark little secret, but here's the problem is they're trying to mass market it and they're looking for the newbie wholesaler, and they try to find you guys that are frustrated with wholesaling. Do not fall for it, because I'm telling you right now, it is not a replacement for wholesaling. Do your wholesaling business as normal. You'll find these deals in there and then you'll learn how to do them. I don't believe subject to is a beginner strategy. strategy. I think it's irresponsible to teach beginners on it. Why? They don't know how to talk to sellers. They don't understand real estate completely. And most people don't understand what they're even getting into. If you don't understand the responsibility of a subject to, you want 100% follow through on it, meaning you want every deal to work out. There's a lot of people treating subject twos like, if it doesn't work out, I'll just walk away from it. That is a terrible, terrible strategy. And that alone is going to get subject twos banned. And by the way, if we abuse subject twos, the United States government has a lever called Fannie and Freddie, which basically, I believe 90% of all mortgages go through. All they have to do is put a clause in there that basically, if you transfer the debt without changing the title on the debt or change hands, that they can make it like a fraudulent transaction. And unfortunately, we're getting closer and closer to getting there. I think we're okay for the next 4 years, but after that, who knows where it's going to go. So let's talk real quick about the risks of a subject to, because nobody ever talks about it. Nobody. And like to me, just like wholesaling, I'm going to tell you the good and the bad with it. So if you got any questions, put it in here. So let's talk about the biggest risk. There's two big issues that you have to deal with. I'll explain the third one. First one's called due on sale clause, which I call the DOS. DOS. What does that mean? It's just a fancy word. Says in that thick packet that the homeowner signed when they bought their house, their dream house, the 72 pages says basically if you transfer the deed or you get behind in your payments, we can call the loan due. And it is supposed to be a leverage point to make sure that they don't do it. And this is the biggest risk. Now, you're Rick, how in hell are they ever going to know if you transfer the title? I will tell you in 2024, especially going in 2025, remember banks just service these loans. They don't own them. These are all through Fannie and Freddie Mac. A lot of them out on Wall Street. They're sold in billion-dollar packets. Banks just service them. So like how a bank services your money at the bank, the same thing. They don't own the money. It's just a servicing. They make money by servicing the bank. So the bank's going to make everything as complicated as they can. So the next part is if AI doesn't get you on this, which they don't, and listen, statistically, I believe it's less than 1, maybe 1.1% of due on sale loans come about. I've had 2 called on me in the last 21 years. And for the most part, don't spend time worrying about it because it's probably not going to happen. The bottom line is as long as the bank gets a regular payment, they usually don't care. These are automated systems. Now, where we get in trouble is on the insurance. So every mortgage that a property is associated with, that's how most people buy. I think 95% of homes have mortgages. When you have a mortgage, it requires them to have insurance. So especially if it's Freddie and Fannie Mae backed, which means it's government securities backed, they are required by law to have an insurance policy. Now, we just did a subject to, guess who the beneficiary of the insurance is? It's John Doe. I bought John Doe's house. I need to be on there. What a lot of you guys will do is you'll go out there and you'll change who the insured is. And when you do that, they're going to instantly notify your bank. And this is when you're at greatest risk for a due on sale clause. Now, there's all sorts of different ways around this. I'm out here to kind of give you legal advice. You can get an additional policy to avoid this, but it's going to have a financial cost to it. Sometimes it's just easier to do that. You can put on as an additional insured. That's what I like to do instead of taking the person off of there. Remember, when you do these subject to deals, you need people that are completely cooperative because a lot of the homeowners, the minute they sell it to you, they'll switch the beneficiary on the insurance, and that's what triggers the due on sale clause. And that's the part that will get you in huge trouble. Also, you got to understand, you're going to get surprises. What do I mean by surprises on subject twos? Well, here's where the inexperience comes in and gets you in big trouble. If you don't know how to underwrite the loan and you don't know all the things going on with it, like is there PITI included? Principal, interest, tax, and insurance. Why? Taxes, insurance go up every year. If you wrote into your paperwork and you sold it with a fixed cost and it goes up, say, 10% a year, you're going to be surprised. And I've done this. I did this when I was extremely inexperienced and I didn't know this. So there's a lot of pitfalls you got to figure out. A lot of times there's massive insurance increases. Give you an example in Florida. In the last 3 years, our insurance has gone up almost 75%. Screw the 10%. What are you going to do if your insurance goes up 75% and you have just a tiny little margin from what you're paying the bank to what you're paying the new buyer? You're going to get what we call surprise. Surprise. It's a pain in the butt, and you got to understand, I'm going to teach you how to avoid these surprises, but honestly, a lot of it is experience. If you have no experience and you decided to skip wholesaling because you thought subject twos are easier, you're going to get surprised. I even had a surprise happen 3 months ago to me. Sometimes houses are in flood zones and sometimes they're not. Do you know that the government can move the map on you? And that's the part that you go, surprise, you've got to $2,500 flood insurance policy, you have to do it. And the thing is, with the mortgage, they're mandated. And you know what? Guess what? If you don't get that policy, they're going to do what they call forced insurance. And forced insurance is about 4 times the average market rate because you have to pay them to go out and do it for you. So I don't want anyone to be surprised, and you've got to understand what happens with this. Here's the last one. This is a big one. Risk. We talk about risk, and let me erase this so everybody can understand this. Here's my biggest pet peeve with teaching the masses subject to. Now, when I first started wholesaling, I didn't completely understand subject tos, and honestly, it wasn't taught to the masses, and that's why we didn't have any issues probably for about, 10, 15 years. Because it's being taught through YouTube and everything else, which I love, don't get me wrong, but the problem is some people get a 5-minute education and they go out and they think they're highly qualified and they're not. One of the biggest trends going on with subject tos is people are flipping subject tos. What does that mean? Let me explain this to you. If you don't know what you're doing and you're flipping, or what I call selling, a subject to deal, you have risk, and you need to understand this. So I have sold properties like this, but I understand I'm always on the hook. So let me show you a graphic representation of how this works. So blow your mind. Okay, so you got the seller, right? Here's your seller. This is you, the subject to guy or gal. That's you. That's your seller. And then here's your new buyer. Because the idea is always to sell these to some sort of end user so we can harvest the largest profit. So the seller said, hey, I tell you what, as a seller, I'm going to take over your mortgage. You do a subject to, you give them a little bit of money, whatever, and you take over the payments. Then you go, hey, so maybe you bought it for $200K on that. So now you have a $200,000 property, and then you have this new end buyer goes, and then maybe you're paying $1,500 a month. And then this guy goes, I tell you what, I'll give you $265,000 if you'll let me take over the existing financing. Maybe even charge him $1,900 a month. And then maybe he puts down 30 grand, 30K down. Perfect, right? Awesome. I just flipped the subject to. And guess what? I'm going to pocket $30,000 up front, goes in your poquito, and then everything's going. Everything's great, right? But here we are. Oh, a year goes down the road. Guess what? The buyer suddenly stops paying the $1,900. And what that $1,900 was going towards the payment of that original seller. So you're long gone at this point. And guess what? Now the property is entering into pre-foreclosure. Guess who they're going to call first? Do you think they're going to call the buyer? No. Do you think they're going to call you, the subject to person? No. Guess who they're going to call? They're going to go right after the seller. Go, hey, listen, you're behind in payments, and you got to fix this quickly or we're going to foreclose on your house. You know what that seller says? How the hell can that be? Because I just sold it to a guy who fixed it. And then guess what? This seller calls you and starts hammering you. And then if you've taken this strategy to flip a subject to, you go, I got my 30K. I'm good to go. Do whatever you got to do. I'm not helping anybody. And then when all that mess sorts out, they get this thing called lawyers involved. And guess what? Who's responsible for this entire transaction? Technically, it should be this buyer. I agree. But the problem is the higher you get in price, the more crap you got to go through in real estate. So we told it at the tippy top of the market, probably oversold it because the guy had a challenging family issue or a credit issue. Who knows? Maybe he came from a different country. I don't know. And then guess what? The seller decides they're going to get a lawyer because they feel like they've been completely shafted. And then guess what the lawyers do? The lawyer's going to call you. They're never going to call the buyer because basically this buyer doesn't exist from there over. And then if you ever go to court, guess who they're going to drag? You. And guess what? You are going to look like a moron and go, let me get this straight. You gave the seller $5K, you took it over, and then you collected $30,000. And then they're going to depose the title company, whoever took that deal down, the lawyer, and then they're going to give it to a judge and they're going to go, I don't understand what you're doing here. So you basically took over the seller's mortgage subject to, and you stopped paying on it. And that's considered fraud, guys. And the problem is you have no recourse when this buyer doesn't do it. The house gets foreclosed. Now, the responsible person jump right in to make it work. But if you're a brand new, say, subject to guy or gal, and you don't know this, you're scared. So you just want to take your 30 grand and run. And that's the problem is you're like, everybody thinks you're a ghost. Ready? I'm going to erase you. But guess what? If a lawyer gets involved or a district attorney, you're going to get subpoenaed and you're going to have to explain the entire transaction. And at the end of the day, you're the one who profited. You're the one who was responsible, said you would make good on all those payments because they're going to have the seller sign an affidavit, and then you are going to be in trouble. Sorry, I see it every day. It happens all the time. So I'm just saying, if you're going to do a subject to, I like to teach subject tos as a long-term buy and hold strategy for a final resale of the property. I hate flipping subject tos. It's ruining our business. And if we keep going down this path, The federal government's going to get involved when they get a more, how do I put it, a more liberal administration, and they're basically going to ban it. How are they going to ban it? Basically, if they say you cannot take over a subject to for a Fannie or a Freddie Mac loan, which are the government-backed loans, that's going to wipe out almost 90% of your market. Now, they've already kicked it around, so it might eventually come if we don't clean our act up on us. Everybody understand this on this. Flipping a subject to is basically when you treat it like a wholesale and then you walk out. But the problem is what happens if that end buyer doesn't make the payments? There are some people that do the right thing. They set monies up in escrow and they do it. But here's the problem. A newbie's not going to have all these advanced strategies. They're not going to have all this money. And honestly, they're overwhelmed just doing it. They get excited with the 30 grand. Maybe they do 5 or 6. I promise you, one of them, your buyer, your end buyer is not going to make the payments. And if you do not stay involved in the transaction and keep an eye on it, you're going to have problems. All my subject twos, I have an escrow agent, I have an assigned employee, and we watch them. I've owned some of them 12 years. But here's the problem. Some people just want to make quick money, and this is where you can get in big trouble in this business. So I'm going to rip through all the questions as soon as I'm done here. I got one more side to do here. So what's the best way to do these types of deals? And I've done this a million different ways, and I'm here to tell you, I like to make a lot of money when I do subject twos. So when I'm doing a subject to, I'm going to go through a basically checklist. Number 1, run your wholesale business and do not change it. Anyone who thinks they're going to do subject to, because I don't want to do the hard work of wholesaling, you're going to get your ass kicked. I'm just warning you right now. If you're trying to avoid doing hard work, you're probably not going to last in real estate. Remember, if you do the hard up front, the easy will come behind it. So I do all my marketing. I promise you, I do not cater to people that are upside down or have little to no equity. If you do it, you will be buried in leads and the amount of drama, and you won't make a lot of money. Don't do it. I've tried it before. It's a disaster. There's a lot of subject to deals out there. The question is, which are the right ones for you to do to actually make money? I'm going to teach you how to make money up front, make money in the middle, meaning your monthly payments, and most importantly, the end money. See, a lot of people do subject twos and they wait till the day they sell it to get paid. That could take you 10 or 15 years. So if I'm going to do a subject to strategy solely, how are you going to make money in between? Well, eventually the cash flows will catch up. Not if you keep stroking $10, $20, $40,000 down payments. You'll run out of money. I get my money from the wholesaling business. That's why rule number 1 is never stop wholesaling. I'm going to put a check mark here. Okay, we got that. Number 2, understand a subject to should be the only way to solve that seller's problem. What, Rick? I don't get it. Listen, most people that sell me their property subject to, I tried to wholesale it. I ran it through X Leads and find out they owed about the same amount as the value of the property or a little bit less. And if they went to sell it, they'd have to write a check. And that gives them severe heartburn. Then what they do is they go meet with all these realtors. And the realtors are like, yeah, I can sell it tippy top dollar. A lot of the realtors can't sell it for what they say they could. And there is a market set price for it. And they find out when the seller finds a buyer, maybe the seller goes, listen, I can sell it for $329, which would get them to break even. But the house only sell for $300 and they got to bring a $22,000 pay. They got to bring a $22,000 check to get rid of the property. And they go, I don't have the money. The realtor walks away. The buyers walk away. The wholesaler comes in and go, listen, I'd love to buy it. I can't help to see what a problem you have here. And then this is what most sellers say to me, Rick, is there anything you can do to help me out with this? I go, well, if you're open to a creative solution, I might have one for you. And they go, here's what I'm listening for. I'll do anything to get this property sold. That's all I need to hear. I never beg anyone to do a subject to with me. If anything, they're begging me to do it. And honestly, the numbers have to work for me. If the numbers don't work, I do not do it. Does everybody understand that? When I say a subject to should be the only way to solve the problem, I mean this. It's the only way to take the deal down. Otherwise, they're going to lose the house to foreclosure, or they're going to go broke trying to keep the house. We want to help people out. Remember, the more problems we solve, the more money we all make. So you have to think outside the box and be resourceful. Number 1, be a wholesaler first. Do not give up your wholesaling business to go be the creative finance guy. You're going to have to earn that over time. You're going to see thousands and thousands of situations, and you're going to learn what fits in each situation. The only way to learn that is over time. Yes, you can get a guru, you can get a mentor, you can get a coach, but I'm telling you, creative financing does not belong in the beginner's hands because they don't even understand the lingo. Are there exceptions? Absolutely. But for the most part, if you master wholesaling, in my opinion, one of the hardest skill sets to get successful at, because you have to apply yourself, if you can do wholesaling, this is a piece of cake. Please do not use this as a replacement because you're going to run out of money. I meet more creative finance people that come to us from freewholesaling.com. I've done 5, 6. I met someone that did 42 deals, but he's broke because he doesn't generate any revenue. Everything's a loan, everything's this. Like, you're never going to make, 10, 15 years, you're going to come back if you can hold on that long. But there's this little thing called life that happens, and you got to be mindful of it. So number 2, understand that you should be the only fit when you do a subject to deal. The third one, you have to underwrite the property. So many people that do creative financing, especially subject to, they ignore the numbers. They go, oh my God, I got a subject to deal. Doesn't mean you're going to make crap. In fact, I'm here to tell you a lot of the subject to deals you should walk away from. Example, for properties worth $300,000 and they owe $390,000 and it needs a ton of repairs, I don't care what strategy you come up, unless you have a buyer that will pay more, you're going to get killed. Please don't do a subject to have your ego. And remember, what I teach in wholesaling, you've got to get rid of your ego to make this business work. If you don't, you are stuck. If the deal's bad, if it's way upside down and the property's ugly, there's very little you can do. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there talking about, the same people that dumped you guys on Airbnb. And by the way, I have Airbnbs, and I told you, only do Airbnbs for unique properties. Waterfront, mountain view, lakes, rivers, ocean, something like that. Why? Because the market's inundated with wholesalers that left wholesaling to go be an Airbnb, whatever, property manager, and here we are. And now here's the next wave coming to you. Ready? Let's make a housing affordable, and then we'll just put a bunch of people in there. Okay, I get it. I would love to do that. It's illegal in 98% of the states. Like in my town here in Florida, in Port St. Lucie, if you have more than 2 families that are not physically related, you can't house them past a guest. What's a guest? I think 2 weeks, 7 days or 2 weeks. How do you get in trouble? The neighbors report you. It's not hard to figure out when someone's got 9 cars out there, people are fighting, there's always people coming and going. They're going to report you and they're going to do an investigation. And then they're going to ask the landlord for the lease. And if a landlord has to give 9 different leases, you're running a day-to-day motel. And I'm here to tell you, but I get $1,000 a room, I get $9,000 a month. I was only getting $2,500 on a regular rent. And I could only get $3,500 under Airbnb. You didn't fix the situation. You just created your own little marketing world, and it's going to sell a crap load of courses. It's not going to work. Think about this. If you're in a neighborhood, and don't get me wrong, I'm all about families working together because these costs are ridiculous, especially property insurance and property taxes. But you can't stick 9 people that are not related in it. That's where you get halfway houses, which I have no problem in the right neighborhoods. It is a commercial operation. It is a commercial multifamily, and you have to be zoned correctly for it. So keep in mind, the people told you that Airbnbs was the salvation to wholesaling, and they shoved all the wholesalers in there, and now the market's completely saturated and it's almost illegal to do it in any major metropolitan city. They're going to do the same thing and tell you to turn a single family house into a multi. Understanding the law's already on the book to prevent this because they've already tried this back in the 70s and 80s. You're going to get massive code violation fines. And honestly, show me an insurance policy that will cover someone for that. Standard single-family home insurance policies only cover one family name, period. They'll cover guests, they're not going to cover that. So remember, if you're going to run a commercial operation, you got to get the licensing, it's got to be up to code, and God forbid there's a fire or something like that. That's why these laws are created. We got to stop trying to reinvent the wheel in real estate. So we're all going back to the fundamentals of wholesaling to make everything work. Stop trying to do these marketing magic, like if you're going to manipulate a single-family house for multi, it's not going to work. Now, subject to are always going to work. And here's the really cool part is they don't only work in single family homes, they work in commercial. In fact, small commercial properties that are 50 to 10 units, it's extremely common to do subject to. And actually the commercial language written in those loans allow people to take over and swap out. So all the stuff I told you about the promissory note and stuff like that, you can switch them out on commercial deals. And here's the cool part is they're legal, they're insurable, and you can run multifamilies with different people in there. Please don't do the single family. Don't try to be your own pad split. I'm just telling you. You guys know Airbnbs, they're pretty much uninsurable. If you put an Airbnb, your policy is meant for a homeowner or a single guest, not for commercial use. Okay, that's my rant there. So the next one is underwrite the property. Make sure the numbers work. Make sure it's an attractive property, because if not, no matter what you do with it, it's still going to be hard to sell. And most importantly, underwrite the mortgage. Does it have principal, interest, tax, and insurance included? It's called the PITI. What are the escrows on it? How far are they behind on payments? What is the true value of it? Go over to xleads.com. It'll give you all this stuff. What are the repairs on it? What are the rental rates? Every one of of these situations I've explained to you, you can pretty much find it at xleads.com. You can use any property software, but I'm just telling you, we don't have to guess on this stuff. It's all set. We don't have to waste our times. Now, here's a disclaimer. If it's behind more than 10 payments, I would be very concerned, because if the payment's $3,000 a month, it's behind 10 payments, that's $30,000 that needs to be made up. That is a crap load of capital. So I don't like when they get too far behind in payments, because your options are somewhat limited, because most of you don't have a ton of cash. And remember, whatever we put down, we have to bring back in from our end buyer. And if you got to make up 30 grand just in back payments, it's hard to make any money on the deal. So 4 or 5 payments, I'm fine with. I like 6 to like 9 is like my maximum threshold, because it just gets ugly after that. So I'm just saying, you got to understand, whatever the number is, you have to make it up back. So once you get over $10,000, $15,000, like it really puts you in a quandary. I'm going to go through all the numbers and show you how to do this. So the next one, I'm going through my checklist, is the seller 100% on board? I can't emphasize this enough to you. When I say 100%, 100, not 99. If they've got a 1% reservation, hold off. Make sure you answer their questions. But if they're not 100% on board, don't do it, because I'm here to tell you the truth. You need the seller's commitment all the way to the end till you sell it. And a lot of times after they sell it, they don't want to deal with you at all. And if they have any reservations or concerns about it, you can't make them do this strategy. Remember, you should be the only solution for them when it comes to subject to. You never talk somebody into subject to. I've tried listing it with a realtor. I've tried selling it on my own. I've tried renting the property. I've tried to put my sister-in-law in there. Rick, I'm done. I'm going to go broke doing this. Whatever you can do to help get this payment off my back and have me avoid foreclosure, I'm all in. That's 100%. If they go, well, I'm not too sure because my name's still on the promissory note, I go, okay, well, go call the realtor. Go call another wholesaler. Like, by this time, nobody's given them the suggestion, because people are very limited in how they think. Now remember, it's got to be the right value, the right type of property. And here's the last one I didn't even put. Oh yeah, I did put it on here. When it comes to repairs, $5K or less. Remember, all these numbers have to add up and somebody has to pay the bill. Now, if you do this right, it's not you that pays the bill. It's your end buyer that does. But if you stack up so much money, 20,000 repairs, 30,000 behind in payments, I mean, at that point, they might as well just go get a bank loan. They don't want to work with you. So once we have our checklist, then we have the deal. So we have the upfront, we have the middle, which are the payments, and then we have the end game. So upfront's real simple. The seller is usually going to want some sort of monetary inducement to hand over the deed to you. Now, I'm here to tell you, I've taken over deeds with zero money. That's right. You guys got to stop trying to get in your seller's head and decide what that number is for them, or try to guess with your ESP, and just use the go for no method. Remember, at this point, if they're 100% on board, you are the only solution. Nobody else could solve this. And they said, Rick, what do I got to do to get you to buy this property? Like, I'm willing to do anything. They have set you up for almost anything. You should be to the point where if it was $1, they would induce them. Now, I agree, $1 is a little light. And if this is shocking to you, most of you guys take all these subject to courses where they teach you to put down 10, 20, 30 grand. If you offer anyone that money, they're going to take it. The reality is you are saving them from bringing a $30,000 check to the closing table. You're already giving them a pay raise just by buying the property subject to. Do not overreach on this part. I cannot stress this to you enough. If you reach too far on this, you're going to be set up for massive failure. I want you to make money up front. I'm going to teach you how to do subject twos in your wholesale business. Remember, if you decide to be the subject to and avoid wholesaling, you're going to get killed, because you're going to give the house away to everyone because you don't understand the fundamentals of wholesaling. So what is my number I give them to? If I've already set up where they possibly get 0 or owe 30,000, every number you give them is a gift at this point. Now, don't get me wrong. You need to take the same strategies we teach over at freewholesaling.com, and you need to implement them when doing this. You have to build amazing rapport. There's no way around it. So guys, if you understand that, go to freewholesaling.com. I put it down there on the bottom. Now, here's the deal. What am I going to offer? I want you guys to target. Here's my secret numbers. Should I share this? Because I could put a big fat course price tag on it like everybody else does. I'm going to offer from 1,000 to 5K. That's my range, guys. I don't go much over it. It has to be a really special property, or you have to give me incredible, incredible numbers to make it work. Now, keep in mind, 1 to 5K. Why? Because if I offer 10, they're going to take it every time, and they're going to ask me for 20. So stop going for yes and go for no. If you built enough rapport and you're solving their problem and you're the only person who can do it, you kind of have a captive audience. Remember, you're saving them like 30 grand. That's what a realtor would cost them. So let's just say I took 5K. I gave them 5K. I was feeling super generous that day. Still a manageable number. A lot of times they need money for moving. They need money to get on with their life. life. Now keep in mind, if you have any back payments, you're gonna have to add up the back payments to this. That's why we want to keep this number low. Maybe it's another, say, $2,500. We would have to add that. And then if I have a small amount of repairs, say I got about $1,500. So in essence, that puts me at 4 plus 5. That's $9,000 total. I'm all in on this property. Do you see why I try to keep that initial down payment low and keep the repairs low? Guys, repairs are a nightmare on subject twos. The more the repairs are, the more capital it's going to cost you, the more at risk for you paying it out of pocket. And most importantly, it's the time. If you have excessive repairs, it takes time. And a lot of times you guys aren't in these markets, they're hard to do. So if I'm gonna do 9 grand, I have a simple formula here. You ready? I go for 3 times what I collect. Remember, if I collect less, I get a bigger margin. So I collected 9, call it 27,000. I'm gonna ask for 30K down for a subject to. So this is what I'm gonna sell it. I'm not getting into the details of sell it. Maybe that's gonna be part 2, but I've done a ton of videos on this. If I collect 30K, I paid out $9,000. What's that give me? That is a $21,000 upfront payment, right? That's basically your wholesale fee. What, Rick? We can make wholesale fees on subject to deals? Absolutely. We're not flipping them. I'm going to show you. If you stay in the deal, you make the most amount of money in a subject to for the right deal. Please, guys, don't do a subject to deal just because you can. I've done subject to deals where I've lost my butt. Why? Because I did not underwrite the numbers correctly. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, you're going to have a payment. Now, you're stuck with the payment. You can't negotiate this one on a subject to. So if you're taking over a payment, say the payment, say it's $1,850 a month, right? Now, in the perfect world, I would love you to double it. It rarely happens. Okay, the minimum I usually want is about the minimum I would ever do is 500, and I usually want 2 times whatever the payment is. Now the payment's stuck because we're taking it over subject to. So that's going to be anywhere from 500 to like 30, what's that, 3,500. So now here's the thing is I can charge the buyer. Now remember, I got to keep some market rates. So this is why I told you, you need to know what the rental rate is. Maybe I'm charging them $2,850 a month. Trust me, they'll tell you if you're charging them too much. So look at the rental rates, because guys, remember on a rental, think about a rental. You got to put down first, last, and security. So if it was $3,000 a month, they'd have to come up with $9,000. That's why $30,000 is so attractive, because they get actual home ownership in it. So if I do this, I'm going to earn about $1,000 a month. Say we did this just for 36 months. That's $36,000 of positive cash flow. And at worst case scenario, I cut it in half. And what's that give me? 36, it was 17.5. And that's my range. So 17.5 to 36K. Now we get down to the final, which is the end of payment. So we put it under contract. So say you put this one under contract, say it was $200,000. That's your note, that's your agreement with the seller. Now, if I'm gonna sell, so this one I told you on this, 500 minimum, 2 times is perfect if you can get that, if the numbers allow it. And then when I sell it for 1.2, and then my range is 1.25. So if I'm going to sell it, I had it under contract for 200,000. I'm not a mathematician, sorry. I'm going to sell it probably for 240. Now, if I come in at 240, think about this for a second, guys. 240, they put down, what was it, 30,000. That's 210. And keep in mind, I have it under contract for 200. So that gives me a minimum of 10K on the back end. But the really cool thing is, while they made those payments, even if it's only 36 months, you're probably going to knock about 4 or 5, let's say about 5K off that mortgage. Because what? Every month they make a payment, it's knocking down the principal on it. So when I add this back up, I get another 5K built in here from equity pay down. So that gives me a total of 15K on the back end. So just to kind of go over the math with you on this, I got to find a different color because I'm running out of colors. Let me just erase so you guys can see here. So if on the front end, on the front, say I made 30,000 and I got to count for that back. In the middle, let's say I made the 17.5. Let's be conservative. It's only 36 months. And at the end, if I truly factor in, I made an additional 10,000 plus the 5,000. That's 15,000. Check this out. This is my favorite thing about subject twos. 12. That's $62,500 total. I don't know about you guys, but if you could squeeze in an occasional subject to, it's a lot better than a $10,000 or $15,000 assignment fee. And the reality of it is, think about this. if you stay in the deal, you can absolutely make an absolute killing on it. So why would you flip your subject to deals? Don't tell me somebody sold you a course on it. The problem is if that deal goes sideways, and remember, the more hands that a subject to deal changes, the more at risk. When it's all said and done, whoever found that deal, in the end, if you get in a courtroom or any prosecutor goes out, they're going to go after whoever wrote the original contract. And everybody else is going to get a pass. And the seller goes, I can't believe they ever did this to me. This is what I'm trying to teach you to it. If you do it this way, you have endless opportunity. Plus, keep in mind, if you're doing your regular wholesaling operation, you have regular money coming in. Obviously, you have marketing expenses. But say you got an extra 50, 60 grand sitting around, go out and buy a bunch of subject twos. That makes sense. That will not only build you money up front, money in the middle, money at the end, but it's going to build your net worth. And this is the secret to how real estate investing works. And guys, I'm going to call it the gateway drug to all types of real estate deals is wholesaling. Why? Because I just showed you the skill sets I used in wholesaling. Instead of giving the seller 20, 30K, I offer between $1,000 and $5,000. Why? What are they going to do? They're willing to walk away the house and let the bank just take it back. There's got to be a value for me doing this for them, saving them foreclosure, saving their credit, giving them the dignity to move on with their life. It is a huge, huge win. And you need to understand that when it comes to doing subject to deals. I love doing them. Do I do a lot of them? No, I do 3 to 5 a year. Why? Because I find the absolute home runs and I swing the bat at them and I go. Some of them I buy just because I can buy. I've partnered, I think, with at least 15 people probably watching this stream. I do it with Flip with Rick Plus. I love it, because people find deals and they bring them to me. If you have a great subject to deal, meaning you've already underwritten the values when you went into X Leads, you looked at everything, you underwrote the mortgage, you know what you're dealing with, and the seller is 100% cooperative, and the house is ready to go with little to no repairs, bring me the deal. Sellmypaper.com. I'll underwrite it. If it works, we'll pair up on it, and then you got a partner, and that gets you in the Flip with Rick Plus free, and kind of gets you my phone number, my contact with me, my staff, and that's what we want to do with it. If I love doing it, but if I had to go out and do 100 subject to deals, I would have to change how I operate, and I don't think I'd make nearly as much money. That's just my personal preference, though. I like someone who's balanced, that can do a little bit of everything. And why wholesaling is the #1 skill set that will lead you to all the different ways to do these deals.